quiet nights of quiet stars, quiet chords from your guitar.
I think doing this project in Rio came directly from Diana. It was something that she wanted to do as soon as we played here last year and played these beautiful shows. The people, the other musicians that we met, the public, the incredible landscape was just kind of intoxicating to her, and she was blown away.
Looking on the mountains and the sea, how lovely. It is very different than Vancouver, but the mountains and the sea and the ocean, and that's where I want to be. I could sing that and be either here in Rio, or I could be in home, driving home from the airport in Vancouver. I was reading about the origins of bossa nova, and there was a Frank Sinatra fan club here and a Dick Varney fan club, and the love of standards of the musicians here in Brazil. It started very early, and the marriage of bossa nova and standards, I think, works very well. It has, through many examples of course, Stan Getz, but for me it was hearing Amoroso, João Gilberto, singing It's Wonderful, and to bossa nova, that I always loved that. I always thought it really worked.
There's a certain sophistication about bossa nova that you don't find in other than maybe the American standard and Cole Porter and people who wrote all the great standards of the 20s and 30s.
You make my life so glamorous.
First of all, that bossa nova is a music of great understatement. It's more like a whisper than a scream, and I feel that Diana is always that way in music. Her voice always holds just something a little back, and it allows some space. There's something, she allows some space to be there.
I'm not comparing it to opera, but I'm comparing it to a very passionate, sensual art form, very different than opera. But when you go to the opera, you really don't need to know exactly what they're talking about. You feel it. And I think that's what I feel when I listen to bossa nova and when I listen to João Gilberto or Tom Jobim, is the feeling.
I think that not only is Diana's voice right for singing bossa nova, but I think also her piano playing is always right on the money. It's an extension of her singing, and her singing is very sensitive and very sexy, which of course the bossa nova suggests. But then when she goes into a piano solo, listen to her single lines, then she really puts on the bossa nova style pianistically, as opposed to the other kind of piano playing that she can do, which is very full and two-fisted and not appropriate for what the bossa nova suggests. So I really admire what she's done that way too.
I think with bossa nova and the music of Jobim, what I've heard what I've experienced myself in performing here, with everybody singing with us, The Girl from Ipanema, in the language it was originally written. And that was a very moving experience. I turned to John Clayton, I saw that he had tears running down his face, and he just couldn't believe it either, because it was such a collective experience of people singing. And that's something that really, really moved me to do The Girl from Ipanema, to do Quiet Nights, to do these Brazilian songs.
But each day he walks to the sea, he looks red like me.
I grew up with people singing around me all the time. At home, my grandparents, we all sang. We sang in church together, we sang, and it seems like people just don't sing anymore when they go to people's houses. And it was such, I used to think that everybody's grandparents loved jazz and had a piano and played and spent their Sunday evenings after Sunday roast playing and singing together, and the piano or whatever instrument we could pick up. My dad's side of the family was totally immersed in music and jazz music, like especially Fats Waller, and old traditional New Orleans songs. I was surrounded by 78 records, old magazines, old sheet music, old newspapers, comedy from the greatest comedy ever made, and did not know what the hell I was going to do with it.
1, 2, 3, 4, Jack Benny.
When I was 16, I started to listen to Monty Alexander, great jazz pianist, and his band members were John Clayton and Jeff Hamilton, so I'd play along with his records. When I was 19, I met Jeff Hamilton at a jazz band camp in Port Townsend, Washington.
And she came there predominantly to find out how the Monty Alexander Trio worked. That was one of her favorite records, and John Clayton and I were on that record from Montreux. And she asked a lot of great questions, and I heard her play the first time, and I said, she didn't sing, she's only a jazz piano player. And I said, you can do whatever you want to do. Who do you want to study with? Because you have so much talent. And so she mentioned Jimmy Rolls, and so John had played a lot with Jimmy Rolls, and I think I introduced Diana to you, told him about her, that she's really got talent. And I was working with Ray Brown at the time, and I told him that you really have to keep your eye out for her because she's a great, great piano player on the rise.
So when I met her, I heard what he was talking about. She really did have something. Not only was she hungry, which we always look for in students. Not only was she hungry for the music, but she was naturally talented in terms of her groove and her sound on the piano. Her soloing was already at a pretty high level for her age.
Well, I think one of the most difficult days for my mother, because my mother passed away 6 years ago, but she had her master's in education and administration, and my father is a chartered accountant. He's retired now. But the most important thing for them was that I went to university and graduated from university. So when I told them I was quitting Berklee College of Music to go and study with Jimmy Rolls and Ray Brown and rent a room in LA, they encouraged me, but I think it was difficult for them.
So as time went on, she studied in Los Angeles. I know that I did. I can't remember if we ever did any trio gigs together, but I sometimes would go to duo gigs with her and just to support her, knowing that she was that eager to be a jazz musician, to dedicate her life to this music that we love. And like they say, the rest is history. She just took off. She opened her mouth at some point, and we discovered that she could sing as well. Put it all together, and you have Diana Krall.
They're still my teachers, and they are also like my big brothers, my family. They are uncles to my 2 little boys. They are just, as Anthony is as well, and we become very much like family. And I've worked with them for so long because I'm always inspired by them. I can always move forward. I'm always learning from them.
Let's fall in love.
We've been friends over the years and have always, every so often, get together and play music together and realize that we have so much in common on the bandstand that we have to keep meeting. And it's kind of like watching your little sister do well, and you're so proud of her because she hasn't really changed. She's still the piano student at that jazz camp.
Great songs are great songs, but not everybody can sing every great song. So what makes Diana's process unique, she's found a personal connection to every song that we're playing.
I get so excited when I'm about to make a record because I know as soon as I walk into Capitol, I have to walk down this rather long hallway and I pass Peggy Lee, Nat King Cole, Bing Crosby, Keely Smith, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, and I always humbly pass and look at them and say, I hope you can help me out today because I'm gonna need it.
I've grown accustomed to his face.
It's a great place to record because it does have such a history there. And I have a microphone that I record with that says Sinatra on it. So that's pretty heavy too. The microphone I'm using was used by one of the microphones that Sinatra used.
He whistles night and noon.
I think that Diana processes music over long periods of time. I know that she'll work on a song for 7, 10 years sometimes before she ever really feels that she found a way in, an entry point to really express it. And I think a lot of this music that's on the new record and that we'll be performing tonight in Rio is stuff that she'd been thinking about for a long time. So I think the idea for the record of a kind of atmosphere is something that's born in her head.
My creative process is very intuitive, and I think about things while I'm walking or what I'm doing, and then I get down to it. I don't do a lot of explaining to band members or working with Klaus. I just sort of play an idea and give him the demo tapes, just solo piano, and he's in the studio while I'm recording them. And he knows what to do. He told me, I think this is his 13th time writing Girl from Ipanema, and it's amazing because Klaus has never been to Brazil, which surprised me.
First of all, I'm a huge fan of Klaus Ogerman, so I get the music, the bass parts that I'm supposed to play, and Klaus has already sort of conceived these amazing arrangements in his mind. He's already done all the work, and we are a piece of that puzzle. So it was really interesting for me to play my bass part, not hearing his fantasy in total until the whole thing was over. And so if I isolate my part, a lot of times what I was playing didn't make sense. Or I'd be playing with this question mark in my mind, like, does he mean that? And of course, the end result was phenomenal.
There were several things that were well prepared when we went in the studio. The beauty about Diana is, though, that sometimes there's this period that you don't know exactly what's going to happen, and that's the element of surprise that's always evident in jazz, and that she never forgets about.
The exciting part is that you never know what you're going to get, really. I mean, when you go in to make a record, part of the, I guess, fun of it, excitement of it, is to, I just don't plan too much, because I'm working with musicians that I know what they do and I don't know what they're going to bring or ideas, and it's so much about feeling that we take a tempo and we'll listen to it, and it'll be the difference between this and this. I always like Eddie Izzard's example of the difference between fabulously hot and effing freezing is between this and this in the shower. So I always look at that example, however, I always thought that was really funny because it's so much about that or that. It's just the difference. And for me, it's all about tempos, especially in bossa nova tempos that can make it romantic and sensual, or feel like you're just kind of back in the piano bar, which I don't mind. I'm not saying that's bad, but do you know what I mean? It can take it into a deeper place. It's just the most exciting thing to make a record, and I still call them records, and I make them with that idea. You know, we agonize over sequencing and go back and forth and eventually come to something that we know makes sense. It's a very, very contained environment that not very many people are allowed into. It's just us. It's just this family, and they see you just totally, completely stripped down and are yourself with these wonderful artists and everybody in that room, in each room, musicians, producers, engineers. it's a very exciting process because it's one that you have for 2 weeks. It's only yours. When we finish the day, we all go to the same restaurant, and sometimes we walk in and they look at us and they go, "Oh, you poor things, here, have an apple martini," you know, and you're in there and you're totally raw, and then you sit around the table and you laugh and you decompress and you tell stories. I'm so sad when it's over because this record, I had the most fun I've ever had making a record. It was just great. Every day I couldn't wait to get there, see what was going to happen.
She uses all our strengths, I feel. She's a great band leader in that sense, so making the album was this way of all of us coming together and bringing our best.
The scariest part is letting it out, you know, and inviting people in to hear it, because you just want to keep it to yourself for as long as you can. It seems like an odd thing to say, but it is such a personal snapshot of exactly where you are emotionally, in every way where you are at that moment.
I think that Diana has, in this album, there's a certain sense of maturity that I've noticed that I'm not even sure whether or not she's aware of it. I don't believe she is. That and it's not that she reminds me of Peggy Lee. It's just that Peggy Lee in the 50s and the 60s, there was a sense of maturity that happened to her at that point. And I'm starting to sense it, and I'm starting to feel it in the things that I'm hearing with Diana. And the vocals on this album, I think, are just spectacular.
My children will be 2 years old in December, and I don't think I realized how much having children would change, I don't know about my attitude, but just change my whole life and the way I play music. I'm happier, I'm full of love in every way. I have less time. It's not about, people always said to me, it doesn't become about you anymore, and it's really true. And I do believe I'm really having everything I could possibly have. I'm involved, very involved mother, as is Elvis. We're very involved parents. We both take care of our children when we're on the road, and it's just joyful. And I find I do better work. I have less time to focus on my work, but when I do, I think has been the best work I've done this record, and the most joyful because I'm sharing it with my kids. I see my mom in myself, and I want to give my kids all the great things I had growing up, and it's just such a great time for me right now in my life. I'm the happiest I've ever been, and coming out of a difficult time with the loss of my mom and Rosemary Clooney and Ray Brown, I'm not looking back. I'm looking forward, and it's just really, really fun and great right now. And I hope the record, reflects that. It's basically a love letter, to my husband and my children in many ways.
Nice, should it be you and me? I could see it.